Welcome back to the VINwiki appraisal panel. I am joined, as always, by John Ficara of Ficara Classic. And today we have a special guest here in the VINwiki studio, Chris Griggs from SOMO.
Happy to be here.
Thanks for coming. Absolutely. And we are going to do a special reappraisal video today. It's been a couple of years since we appraised the car collections of our good friends Tyler Hoover of Hoovie's Garage and Freddie Tavarish Hernandez. And a lot has changed in their lives and in their garages since then. And so today I thought it would be fun to appraise both collections, see what we think, and see who currently is at the top of the pile of the collection value. So we're going to start with Tyler Hoover, who had the most exciting, most recent installation to the garage, his Bugatti Veyron. He bought a 2008 Veyron Coupe from Perrin Shaw at Chicago Motor Cars. A really, really cool car, racing blue fenders, the rest of it black, the interior entirely redone, not original, but in a very bright matching blue. I looked at this car. It was owned by a Ponzi schemer for a while. Fairly low miles, fairly complete. He's got his PDA, he's got his speed key, little Uzi Vert, but his car is really, really nice, although it has been a little bit problematic. I think now the shifter is working. When they had reupholstered the interior, they messed it up and they glued it on. It couldn't be removed to be fixed. It did have some issues as he was road tripping the car home, but now, as I understand it, it's a good car. So what do you think it's worth?
Well, I think if you take a look at the market, now obviously I'm sitting next to someone here who's got a pretty good idea of what these things are going for. But there have been two sales recently at auctions that kind of set some watermarks here. So you've got your low watermark at about 1.215. That was a black car. It was an '06, about 23,000 miles on it. And then on the other side, you have a high watermark at about 1.7. And that was a 3,000-ish mile car. I think that we've got, in my opinion, I like the two-tone. I think the Veyron lends itself very well to the split color scheme. If I'm going to put a number on this car, I think it's about 1.4 with the miles. It's got a little bit of known history out there, but it has since been corrected.
There you go. John, what do you think?
I'm kind of there with Chris. I mean, Chris obviously done all the really nice analysis there. I was at kind of 1.4, but I'm going to give it 1.45 just so Hoovie can pay back his girlfriend the $50,000 he borrowed from her. So that'd be nice and even at 1.4 for him and when he's done.
Fortunately, Premier Financial Services did not require that extra $50,000 in upfront, so he has already paid April back. But what a girl, being willing to help your boy buy his Bugatti. I do know what he paid. He paid a little bit more for his than I paid for mine. And I do keep a good eye on the market, searching across the internet. And right now, you can't buy one for less than about 1.6. So that's what I said it's worth. They do pop up around the world occasionally for a little bit less than that. And I felt like this car should have been more like a 1.3, 1.4 car. The problem is you just can't buy them for that right now. They're about to announce cheaper tires with Michelin. They're partnering supposedly to make tires that will fit our stock wheels but are not $40,000, which I think will drastically improve the values of these cars. So I think it is headed in the right direction. Now, one car that you mentioned might not be headed in the right direction is his SLR Roadster. Now, I love an SLR. I miss my Paris Hilton car an awful lot. Tyler has an SLR Roadster that he's used at a lot of events. He just had it out in the Hilton Head Concours, and I put it at about $375.
And it's not that these cars are heading really in the wrong direction. I think we're in a period of time where we're in a down market on them. So if you are thinking about buying one, actually not a bad time to look. But some of the sales we've seen shows the market's a little bit soft right now. Throw in the fact that on Carfax, this car literally had a fire,
Small fire.
a little bit. I'd put this car right about 300. But like I said, if you're looking to buy one right now,
Might be a good time.
I'd look at the market.
What about you, John?
Yeah, it is definitely a down market if you look at the trend for them right now, but I don't think that's a permanent thing. But always be cautious when Ed says small fire or small anything, because that's always a caveat to something that's a lot worse. But this car wasn't that bad. I actually put it at about 350 in the current market.
There we go. Now, his next car is his 599, his Ferrari 599 GTB in Venezia purple paint, which I think is always going to apply a premium to an Italian sports car. It is a swapped manual through EAG, and so it is now a manual 599. If it was a proper by VIN manual 599, it would be $600,000-$700,000. But generally, the math that I kind of adopt is that you pay like strong retail money for the spec, plus about half of the conversion cost. And so that got me to about 160 on this one.
And I think you're probably spot on with that. We've seen some other cars with lower miles go closer to 200. Occasionally, we'll see some go over that mark if they're really special, or in some cases, you just get that one guy that's got to have the Ferrari that goes clack clack. But I think 160 is the money on this car.
I'm really close to you. I saw this car at Hilton Head. It is gorgeous in person. I kind of want it. So I'm going to say 150 on it. So he'll sell to me for 150.
Now, recently he bought another Ferrari, a Testarossa. It's not in great shape. It had a good bit of corrosion, as I understand it. Black car. Look, they're as iconic as a Ferrari could ever be. Very, very cool. But this one I don't think is going to bring the six figures that a lot of 512s and Testarossas are bringing right now. I put it at 75 grand.
Yeah, I think you might be a little bit light. The car's had a fresh service, and anybody who's dealt with a Testarossa knows the engine out service is always the first question people are going to ask. So if you've got a car that's got fresh belts, it's a Testarossa, it's an iconic Ferrari. I think that there's always going to be somebody who wants a car like that. I'm going to put it at 90.
I think Testarossas are hot. I think they're going to get hotter. This car is not great, but great Testarossas are selling well into the six figures. So I can't even imagine a Testarossa at all that runs with an engine out surface for less than 100 grand. So I put it at 100 grand.
Probably fair. The next car is one I know very well, as does Freddie, but now the owner of the Car Trek 2 Aston Martin Vanquish is Hoovie's Garage. Now, I bought this car in 2020 for 29 grand. It was our search for the most depreciated supercars on earth. I think it had like a 260 or so MSRP. When I had it, it ran quite poorly, almost always in limp mode. The air conditioning didn't work. It was not happy, but I really, really enjoyed the car. I think it's one of the most beautiful cars ever made. And there has been a lot done to it. Thank you, Wizard. And so I think now it's worth more. I don't know how much more necessarily, so I just put it at 50 grand.
And you're probably not far off. I also used to own one of these cars. I think they're fantastic. The design's great. The sound's phenomenal. The biggest downfall of the car is the transmission. And truthfully, I think that's why they're probably not worth more money than they are right now. But I think you're probably about 60 on this car. They have been coming up a little bit. You see some good examples bringing some big bucks. I think it's a good car to have right now.
Now, wasn't Tavarish going to do a manual swap in this, but he never did? Is that what happened with it?
Yep, there's a couple cars that Freddie has mentioned manual swapping that remain paddle shift or automatic.
Yeah. And again, like Chris said, the transmission's awful on those cars. And I think when I appraised it, I said that if he had done the swap, it would be worth about 70. But since he didn't do the swap, I put it back around 60. So I think you guys are spot on.
Now, he has a 1949 Cadillac that I think is gorgeous. It's a sedanette, I think is the way you'd say it. Really, really a spectacular looking car. I don't know if he bought it at Barrett or just wherever else off the street, but it's super duper cool. It's got a 500 cubic inch engine, and I just think it's awesome. So I might be high on it, but I said 70 grand.
And I think you're close. These cars, they're so beautiful. You've got that Art Deco styling, just very smooth, swoopy lines, very Americana. I'm a little bit more bearish. I think that the market on some of these older cars is starting to decline. I'm at 60.
I think this car is fantastic. Not only it's gorgeous, it's one of the first Finn cars ever. It was designed after the P-38 fighter plane with the little twin booms on the back, and with the sloping fastback, it is stunning. The fact that it's a resto mod, I think, doesn't take away from the car. I think a perfect version of this worth is about what a perfect resto mod is worth, because you can actually drive the car. It's got a 500 cubic inch, more recent engine. It's got disc brakes. He can drive it anytime he wants. I think it's cool as heck. I'm going to split right between the two of you at 65,000.
Now, we know Tyler loves his My Box, but he has got the coolest of them all, an early 62 with the partition. It's got the electrochromatic roof, the full reclining rear seats, the special headphones, the champagne flutes, the cooler, all the stuff. I know he loves using it to haul the kids around to school and stuff like that. I love a Maybach as well. I love all Mercedes S-Classes, especially those of that vintage. And so I think it's very, very special. They aren't worth that all that much, but I put it at 45,000 bucks.
Well, I got to disagree with you on that one. I think this one's probably closer to 50. It's a 62. It's a long wheelbase. Like you were saying on some of the other cards, it's hard to find those right now.
It's true.
Yes, they depreciate every bit of their weight, but right now we are seeing a little bit of a rise in demand for these things.
Now, he brought it to Hilton Head as well, and I learned of a bit of a caveat that goes with the operation of the 62. Have you ever sat in one?
I have not had the pleasure.
Well, the sitting in the back is absolutely a pleasure. Sitting in the front is problematic because the room made for the partition makes the car very, very small up front. I would say the distance from the seat back to the dash is considerably shorter than that of my femurs. And so I can't fit in the front of the car to drive. I'd have to have the kids drive me around in it, but it is awesome. But it's also got 104,000 miles on it. So
I got to sit in it too. I got to sit in the back. I actually got to ride in one of these in New York once, right through Manhattan, looking through the clear roof. And it's an amazing experience, but it is the Maybach that you are driven in, where the 57 is the one you can drive. They're amazing. I think they're insanely undervalued. I'd love to have a 57. They're just magnificent cars. The insides are tremendous. The outside looks like a Lincoln Continental. It's not that impressive, but man, inside you are sitting inside of a Learjet. But you can find them cheap. You can find them cheap. And I put it at 39,000.
now, he did recently get a Grand National, not purely for his own enjoyment, but got one with 100,000 kilometers on it, an 87. Super duper cool, nicely done car. I think he picked it up at one of the auctions, and I felt like it was worth about 40 grand.
I think I love these cars. I mean, the G body, it's arguably the coolest G body of the era. 87's the right year for these cars. The only, I guess you could say, knock that I really have on it is being a Canadian spec car. That's going to knock the value down. And for that reason, I'm about 35 on it.
I think the last time I looked at this car, I said it was worth $50,001. I'm going to stick with that. I still think they're worth all the money. The right one to the right person. They've got a tremendous fan base and a huge cult following. So, yeah, maybe it's a little less than that, but I'm going to stick with my old appraisal.
That's it. Now, another car that is still on the list, and there are not many on Hoovie's garage list versus what we had last time, is the Apollo 911. This is one of the first cars that really saw just an explosion of views and traction on his channel. It is now LS swapped. It's been re-LS swapped, and really is a nicely sorted car. We used it for a couple scenes in Car Trek, and I love these cars that are just so iconic and so critical to the narrative of the channel. And so I'm glad that he has that car back. It does have 250,000 miles. I don't know how many the current engine has on it, but I said 25 grand for it.
I think with the miles and being an LS swap car, I just, I feel like I'm being generous, honestly. It's a cool car, but I'm really having a hard time getting anything above 20. And even then, I feel like I might be a little high.
Might be a provenance bump there.
I think there's definitely a provenance bump because I put it at 35 because it's Hoovie's car. Like this, there's no way to separate this car from Hoovie. I think some motorhead would have a blast with it. I think it was done right. Wizard had his fingers on it. To have a Porsche 911 at 35 grand that hauls butt like that thing does, I think that's not a bad value.
I think you're right. Now, of course, he still has Grandma's SL, the 1985 Euro market 500 SL, 130,000 miles on it. I know it's never going anywhere, but I think it is a super duper cool car. They're not insanely valuable, but I think 25 grand gets it done.
Yeah, I think you're pretty close. The Euro spec stuff never really brings quite the same money in the US. But again, the R107s are just such well-built cars. They are on the rise. The 560s and 380s, even the 450s have been bringing some good money lately. I'm going to go 22.
They are magnificent cars. I've always wanted one since Steve Austin, astronaut, $6 million man, drove one. But there's a lot of them. They brought a lot of them in the country. Even the European cars are pretty popular here in the gray market. So I put it at 20 because that's what you can find them for.
Quintessential Hoovie car, '05 Escalade in turquoise or whatever the color's called. Most people that are our age think these are as cool as they were back then. They're probably not, but I really like it. It's got 99,000 miles on it. I said 17, and that probably accounts for some color premium.
I think I'm going to take this moment to channel my inner Ed Bullion as someone who owns a GMT 800, a 8.1 Suburban. I love these trucks. The Escalade is, at the time, it was about as nice as you could get, and it just had that status. On top of it, it's a very rare color. Only '05 and '06. Most of the time you saw that color in '06. It's the long wheelbase making it even harder to find. I would say if you're going to go hunting for one of the rarest examples outside of an EXT, Hoovie found himself a pretty good one. So I'm going to go 14 on it.
I just have a hard time swallowing that an old Escalade is worth anything. I don't care what color it comes in. I mean, I still scrap these cars to pull out the LQ9 motors out of them, which were fantastic. But you can find a beat up one, which most of them are, for 4 or 5 grand and gut them for the good parts. Honestly, I mean, it's a beautiful car. He has some kind of weird sensation. It's going to be a super collectible someday. But to me, it's 10 or 12 grand. You can get one. If you're going to pay a premium for that color, good luck to you.
Another car with some Car Trek provenance and even more Jurassic Park provenance is his 94 Jeep Wrangler. Really nicely done in the Jurassic Park livery. Super cool, and I think it was a great addition, although not a great automobile to use for Car Trek. They're not worth all that much, but I said for 13 grand, how could you go wrong?
Yeah, and I think with the Jurassic Park livery, give it a little bit of a bump. I'm gonna go a little higher at 15.
I I agree at 15. The Jurassic Park thing is awesome. It's actually he sorted that thing out, unlike Freddy, before that show, and that Jeep did really well up in the mountains, and it's a nice rig, and I think somebody would be extremely happy at $15,000.
Tyler's oldest car is his 1946 Chrysler Town and Country. Beautiful woody car. Awesome. I think it's super duper cool. That's not really my wheelhouse, but I figured it has to be worth 60 grand, right?
You're not far off. I think these cars had their day. You go back a few years ago, again, one of those cars where the buyer pool just isn't that big anymore. Some of them are literally dying off. But at the end of the day, Woodies are iconic. It's a convertible. I like it at 55.
I love these old Woodies. These were always one of my favorites. When you go to concours, you're always drawn to them. The convertibles are just outstanding. I still think there's a market, and I think a lot of these old cars are going to see a second wind at some point. There's going to be an interest. Young people are going to get hooked into these older cars, and they're still selling for pretty decent money. So I put it at 65.
Now, he bought another Bentley. He's had a bunch of Bentleys, but right now he's got an '06 Continental GT with 82,000 miles. Now, I think he recently bought it on one of your competitors' sites. Is that right?
I can't be confirmed.
But is there? It's just a black car. Like it's not nice, is it?
It's a Mulliner package, but it's got a little wear and tear here and there. At the end of the day, I think these cars scare a lot of people. There's just a lot of unknowns, especially the early cars. They weren't quite as well sorted as the later production cars.
That's it. I've been looking at early Continental GTs because one of our characters in stories is maybe about to get out of prison, and she always wanted a pink one like Paris Hilton. So I've been lowballing some of these things, and he paid 30 grand for this car, but I'm offering like 10 for stuff like this. So I gave him the benefit of the doubt and said that maybe it's worth 29, but I don't see how.
I'm gonna go 27. There's a saying, especially at an auction, you're overpaying by a car by one bid. In this case, it may have been 2 or 3 bids, but I like it at 27. I think at the end of the day, it's a W12. It's a well constructed car as far as the materials and everything.
Maybe I'm a little high on this. I mean, I think I originally did 40 for this car, and I think it's lost a little value since then, which is a shame because it is a triumph of engineering, and they're amazing to drive. And yeah, they're terrifying if you're trying to be an ordinary guy who can afford a Camry, who's thinking about buying a car where the engine service costs as much as another one of his cars. I had it at 35. Maybe it's worth less now. And Ed, if you find one for 10, I'm totally a buyer.
You're probably a pusher of a $10,000 one, but I also agree. One of the coolest cars he has, I think, is not street legal, but his 99 Eldorado concept is spectacular. I think it looks so cool up on his lifts and everything else. And so this car's transacted a lot. I think he bought it at Mecum recently for about 12 grand, but I think it's worth more than twice. I think it's worth 25,000 bucks for as cool as it looks, and it's orange.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely worth more than what he bought it for. I look at these kinds of cars in two things. Is one side, I remember Hot Rod magazines, and you see this kind of stuff on the cover, and it's just such a cool era. On the other hand, it's not street legal. You can't really do much with it. You just got to sit and look at it. For what it is, I think it's 20.
Oh, this thing's not street legal?
No.
I had no idea. All right. Well, I had it at 27.5. I was actually gonna push it over Ed's thing, but if you can't drive it, then that's almost pointless. I'm gonna put it at 15.
One car that I've enjoyed was the predecessor to this one. We took on Car Trek several times his older Express van, but he has a nicer one with its airbrushed paint job and everything else. And I think it is amazing. I have no use for a giant van that seats, I don't know, 50, 30 people that it has. But he had this commissioned, it's all customized, and I said 50 grand for it.
I admire how much you love the van. I really do.
I think it was like 80,000 bucks. It was a lot of money.
I I'm just not sure how we're gonna bridge that gap here because I'm at 15. It's cool, but at the end of the day, what else do you do with it? Like you said yourself, how many people can you really shuttle around?
A bunch of Car Trek staff. I guess maybe beyond that, it doesn't have that much use, especially if you got to partition my buck.
This van is really cool. And again, I agree. There's not a huge market for them, but the market there are for these conversion vans is high. They're expensive to make. They're usually in pretty good shape when you find them. I've seen the van. It's really nice. If you want a budget version of a beautiful limousine, and you want a van, you can tow something with it. I think it's very useful. I had it really cheap 1 point, and I don't think it's worth 50, but I think somebody would buy these all day long between 20 and 30 grand.
Tyler's had a bunch of Corvettes, but right now he's got a 62 gorgeous 327 car, stale restoration, and not numbers matching, but just a wonderful driver and fits very nicely into the collection. I still think it's worth about 80 grand.
I like this car at 70. If it was a numbers matching car, a little fresher restoration, higher horsepower engine, I think you'd probably be right. But because of that, I'm going to back off a little bit.
The C2 Corvette to me is one of the most gorgeous of all the Corvettes, and unfortunately, that age gap for the Corvette is a little soft. I've sold a couple of C2 Corvettes, which I hate selling Corvettes, but I've sold a couple, and they're just really soft. I sold a 427 convertible, and that went for less than 100 grand. So I can't imagine a 327 being worth more than like 65.
Now, he also has a trio of Ford trucks. He's got a 72 F-250, that's a Ranger camper special with a 390 in it, and air conditioning. He's got a 300,000 mile 2011 Raptor, and a 2000 Lightning Fast and Furious special, 110,000 miles. And so I had 40 for the 250, 15 for the Raptor, and 20 for the Lightning.
I'm a little bit less than you. I don't quite see the camper special the same way. Cool truck, but I'm at 20. The Raptor, that's a lot of miles. I'm at 15. And then the Lightning today, 20. Couple weeks, couple months next year, that's definitely going up.
There we go.
I was a little more generous. The F-250, it was at 30. The Raptor is at 20, and the Lightning at 30. And I think the Lightning's got a lot of room to grow.
Tyler had a Cybertruck, made a lot of content with it, and he traded it for a Cadillac Lyriq, which I believe is leased. I hope it's leased because the residual value of these electric cars is nearly nothing. And so I just put it at 2 grand because I believe that's the useful value that he shall get out of it. That's about the way I value my own electric leased car. So who knows?
Well, that's fair. I think today, if you were to go buy one right now, I'd put it at about 35, but the opposite of what I said with the Lightning, ask me tomorrow, that number's probably going to be lower.
If he leased an electric car, to me, he's just throwing that money away. He's not going to get anything out of it at the end. It's just an appliance. It's like buying a phone. So I put it at negative 12,000.
Penalized for the lease. I can't disagree with you there. I'm sure Dave Ramsey wouldn't either. He's got a 98 740 long wheelbase car, 130,000 miles. I said 5 grand. He's got an 87 Grand Camino, kind of if they'd actually made a Grand National El Camino what if thing. I put 12 for it. And he's got his terrible, terrible Hellcat, 70,000 miles, but absolutely awful. I put 7,500 bucks for it. So yeah, what do y'all think about those?
Well, the 740, I mean, at the end of the day, the car's got to be at least worth something in parts. So I threw about 6 on there. The Grand Camino, just the cool factor. You've never seen one before. It's got to be worth 10. The Hellcat, at the end of the day, for 707 horsepower, that's worth something to me, especially with a stick. So I'm optimistic on that car. I'm gonna be a 38 on that.
Whoa! Goodness
38
gracious.
grand.
I, I think they're all getting stolen, but maybe it's worth more.
That's strong. That is strong. So the BMW I put as scrap, which I did last time. Just throw it away. The Gran Camino I had a 10, and the Hellcat. It's if it's just you just take it apart, it's worth $10,000 in bits and pieces probably. So that's what I put it at.
We've got a few more cars in the garage right now. An '03 Mach 1 Mustang. I honestly, I don't have soft spots for many Mustangs, but I do like this one. It's grabber blue. It's the right car. It's a 5-speed. I put it at 20 grand, but it's about all the fun you could have for 20 grand.
Well, I'm gonna go overly optimistic here, and I'm gonna go 40 on this car. I think these things are gonna be collector grade at some point. It's the right color. It's low enough miles. Maybe that's not the number that it's gonna get right now, but I'm gonna be hopeful.
I would never spend that much money on a Mustang, but
Got 12,000 miles.
I think it does have a place to go. But right now, I think you buy them all day long in different looks and paint jobs and versions of them for about 25 grand.
Now, one of his more recent acquisitions is a pace car, and not just a pace car edition with the graphics and the numbers and things like that. This is a real, like, hand-painted brickyard pace car. It's wider than it's supposed to be, and so it is a '98 Monte Carlo, and I think it's awesome. I know it was sold as the cheapest one in that whole batch of pace cars they ran recently, but I said 15 grand. How cool could it be?
Yeah, I'm there with you. The pace car is always cool. There's always gonna be someone who likes that, and there's historical aspects to it.
I think it's the first car we all agree on. I said about 15 grand because wouldn't you buy that for your grandpa, right? He's about the only guy who's going to appreciate it, but 15 grand all day long.
Now, one car I know that he bought recently and struggled for views was the Christine car. He bought a '59 Plymouth Sport Fury, and made a great thumbnail. He had an awesome road trip in it, but nobody really cares. And I think that's happening to a lot of these movie cars. It's not the one that was in the movie, but that's where everybody comes to love a Sport Fury from. And I can see it waning a bit. So I said 25 grand. I think he spent a bit more than that, but I don't know. It's cool.
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you. I'm a little higher, and I'm at 30. I think nostalgia drives a lot of this stuff, and when it starts to wane, so do the prices.
I came in surprisingly, usually for these cars, I come in pretty low, but I came in a little higher at 40 if it's a properly sorted, straight going car. I think at an auction, people getting hot and excited about it, I think it could bring some money like that.
So going through Tyler Hoover's collection, I come to a grand total of $2.9 million. Fakara, you're a bit behind me at about 2.7, and Chris, 264. Any way you slice it, amazing. Our average was $2.76 million worth of cars in the Hoovie's garage fleet of not that many hoopties anymore. He's growing up fast. And last time we did it, we were 2.637. So he's about 130 grand up, which, given the things that have happened the last few years, not bad at all.
I'd say so myself.
That's it. So let's look at Mr. Freddie. Tavarish's content has been on fire lately, largely because of the success of the McLaren P1. He's got a 2014 P1 that was in a little bit of water for just a little bit of time. Not that big of a deal, really. And he's just about done with it, I think. I mean, he's got a long way to go. But it's a very, very awesome project, and he is doing some amazing things with it. It's only got 315 miles on it. Pristine condition. Yellow. Good spec. Now, he's mentioned that he paid $575,000 for this car. He's spent a lot more on it. He's got an engine built by Arnie at Cannonball Garage that is really for a 720S, and then they're kind of hybridizing to non-hybridize the car. Several wiring harnesses that should make it work at some point. But he's moved it along. He's added to it. He's cleaned up a lot. He certainly pulled a lot of sand out of it. And so I said it's worth more than that now. I said 900 grand. That might be too nice to Freddie.
Well, so here's the thing about the P1s is that if you look at the market before 2023, the highest sale we ever saw was 1.8 million for top of the market. Since then, we've had 4 cars sell for over $2 million. So these cars are on the rise. Unfortunately, I don't think Freddie's car is really part of that because right now You still have a car that's not much more than the sum of its parts. I really don't see more than 600 for it.
There was a good rising tide joke available there. But
Missed the mark on that one.
sorry. What do you think, John?
It's a parts car. It's a project car. It's one of the world's most expensive project cars ever. So if you had to go buy it off of him, that's what you would be buying. You wouldn't be buying a P1. There's not a whole lot of P1 left, but all the bits that he has, the engine's all done. It's not the right engine, but it's almost impossible to value. You said 900. I'm going to be a little generous, but not as generous as you. I'm going to say $800,000 because that's what I think the sum of the parts are worth. When it's together and finished, I look forward to coming back to all of us and seeing what we think it's worth then.
That's a very, very good point. Another project that is underway is his Aventador. I know me and Freddie and Tyler are constantly talking about who's going to get an Aventador first, and the timing's never been right for the others. But hey, he got one, and it's an Aventador S, a 2018, about 18,000 miles. It was previously salvaged, but it's a good color. It's bright blue. He's going to change that, I'm sure. He says he's going to rebuild it into kind of an Ultimate spec. He also said at one point he was going to manual swap it, which is words I've told him not to use nearly as often, but it is complete-ish. He's got all the parts. They're just very much not together. And so, when all the King's horses and all the King's men put the Aventador back together again, I think it'll be worth about $275, since a nice one's maybe $400.
Yeah, I'm not too far away. I like it at $250. At the end of the day, it's still an Aventador. You still got a V12 supercar.
I totally agree with Chris. It's an Aventador. That's full stop, right? So I said $250,000 as well.
Now, the car that really launched Freddie's channel, he had already done a lot and had some great videos, but the traction that he got early on with the Gallardo rebuild was incredible. It is a salvage title, manual 08 Gallardo Spider that he has painted a metallic white. The top doesn't work. It's a little iffy sometimes in the way that it runs. It could probably stand to have a different clutch in it, but at the end of the day, it's done, it's complete. I just sold my flood car, also a salvage title, early manual Gallardo Spider, for 85 grand. I think his is worth the same.
I've got to give his car a bump over that. Just not having water damage, I think, goes quite a long way.
It's no big deal.
And maybe not having mud caked in the doors helps a little bit.
We got it out.
I'm at 105 on the car.
Okay.
I'm going to bump it up even a little bit more.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is attached to Freddie. He did some cool stuff to it. I think it's a fanboy car. I think somebody would have a great time with it. And I think a fan would pay $115 for it.
Well, and you're probably right. If there is any YouTuber provenance to assign, it's there. We try to not necessarily lean too heavily into that, but with some of these cars like the Apollo 911 for Tyler, you just can't separate it from the brand that is Tavarish in this case. You also cannot separate this next car from its appearance in Fast and Furious. His 2003 Lamborghini Murcielago is absolute garbage. It's got a Jaguar V6 swapped in for reliability. It's not even that complete, but it is a car that was on screen in whatever 6 Fast, 6 Furious, or Fate of the Furious, or one of these Furiouses. But he does have the motor to the car, because I sold it to him, a complete drivetrain that actually Sam Hard from Hard Up Garage dug up years and years ago. And so he has all the pieces. Now, he had the other car, the Hero car, that he finished and made perfect, and it is done wonderful and sold. It sold for a record price for a car that was not either a manual LP640 or a proper SV, an LP670. And so I think this car, knowing that everything is there to turn it into another one of those cars, and I'm not allowed to say exactly what it sold for a lot. I think it's worth 300 grand, because even if you spend a few $100 grand fixing it, you're still in good shape.
Well, as someone who does not own a Murcielago, I got to disagree with you a little bit.
Independent opinion.
I think that at the end of the day, you have a car that's a movie car. It's been on screen. It's recognized. There's a lot of Fast and Furious fans out there. I think that's worth something. But at the end of the day, you still have a car that needs a whole lot of work. I really can't see it going beyond 100.
Having worked on and built film cars for years, I know how dreadful these things are and how mutated they are. And this thing is fully mutated. I think originally I had said this was worth about 100 grand. If he's got the motor and he's got all the bits for it and things like that, I think it's worth a little bit more now, but it's obviously still not a proper car. It'd probably take a fortune to get it right. But I'm going to knock it up to about 150 as it sits right now.
Freddie has three of the greatest drivers' cars of the last couple decades. He's got a 430 Scud, he's got a 675, and he's got a GT3. And these are all wonderfully iconic cars, all terrible, terrible histories, each involved in crashes that they should not have come back from. The 675, he rebuilt on the channel, done exceptionally well. He then blew up the motor, and it got a new motor from Cannonball Garage and Arnie Toman. And I think the car is really, really awesome. I think it's worth 225. The GT3 is a 2022 wing car, ultraviolet, owned by Adam LZ, crashed by Adam LZ, rebuilt by Matt Armstrong with some help from Freddie, and now Freddie owns it. I think that one's about 150, and a Scud that was demolished, missing the whole front of it. He has painted it white. It was just at SEMA. It is now an EAG manual swapped car. It's got a lot of challenge components on it, and I think that car is worth about 210.
So on the McLaren, the problem with McLaren has just always been depreciation every time they release another model. So you have the 675 and then comes a 765. Everything goes down. I'm a little more conservative. I'm at 180 on that car. The GT3, great cars. There's a lot of availability out there if you're a buyer. You've got your pick of the litter. I think the history on this thing would turn some people off. I agree with you at 150 on that. The 430 Scud, it's getting harder and harder to touch those cars under 200. But because of the history on it, I think I'm at 180 for it.
Clean title, though.
All right. Well, the McLaren is one of my favorite cars of his. I've got to drive that. It is absolutely magnificent. It is beautiful in person. They may be devaluing, but this is, I think, is a special car. I had it at 200. The GT3 is a track weapon, and they're just absolutely brilliant. I had that at 160, and the Scud is I'm having a hard time with that car and its history and what's been done to it. And I know a nice Scud is worth some real money. I had to knock it down to 150.
I love his E46 M3. He has not made a lot of content with this car, but it is totally gone through, painted techno violet, all the right interior bits, just the right kind of, resto mod, OEM plus, whatever you want to call it, reimagined E46. I think it's super cool. 30 grand.
I admire you. I admire you for that position. I love the color. I have an E36 in Techno Violet, so that's obviously a plus. At the end of the day, there's just a lot of miles on that chassis. I think these cars are definitely on the rise, but today I'm at 15.
To me, this is just some kind of like tricked out roach. I love the 46. Um, I I had it at $6,000. I probably would pay a little more than that. I think I was being a little cruel there, but I just don't see a whole lot of value in this car with that many miles on it and that much modification.
This may be shaped by the fact that when I had one of these cars and you drove it, it broke down and stranded you in the rain.
Yes, it did.
Freddie has two Aston Martins, both his dream cars. We used his DBS for Car Trek 5 alongside my LP640 and Tyler's now gone SLS, but he also has the Vantage that he bought from Doug DeMuro and just bought back, and his most recent video is about that car and kind of the journey to bring it back to life. And so the DBS is super cool, Casino Royale spec. I really, really like the car. I've gotten to drive it a few times. 175 grand. And every single time that Vantage has transacted, it has done so for exactly the 36,000 bucks. And so I guess it probably could sell for that again.
Well, on the DBS, that's a car that I think is really coming up in the market. We sold a former Michael Fuchs car, green on green, for about 217 grand. Now, lower miles, unique spec. The Casino Royale is pretty common. I like the car a lot. I'm at 180. And then on the Vantage, 35 just feels right.
Let's see. On the DBS, I had that, and these cars are not my strong suit, and I'm not actually a huge fan of the modern Aston Martins just because they drop in value and I don't know. They just feel cheap to me in some ways. I had the DBS at 150 and I had the Vantage at 35.
Now, there's always a strong Japanese presence in Freddie's garage, so we're going to run through some of those pretty quick. He's got a couple of Supras, a 95. This was the one that we used in Car Trek 6 that he tried to convince us was $1. It's not, but it's quite well built. I've got it at 70. He's got a 94 right-hand drive. The blue car has been at SEMA, awarded many things. I put that at 55. He's got his terrible, cringeworthy RX-7 from Car Trek 7. That's awful. It's a piece of garbage. I've got it at 9 grand. And his 3000 GT VR4, a very, very nice car. I have it at 35. And then, of course, he's got the million-mile Lexus, which is worthless, $2,500. And his Maxima that he used in Car Trek 5 alongside the DBS, I've got that at 1,000. So for the sake of efficiency, we can just run through those together.
So the Supra, yeah, I like that car. Left-hand drive, those are always pulling a premium. You got big horsepower. I like that car at 90. The right-hand drive car, knock that one down a little bit. I think 65 is fair on that. The RX-7, I'll go 12, and the VR4, 30, I think. The million-mile Lexus, I mean, that's a cool achievement. It's got to, that alone, I think, is worth a little bit. And aside, you know, those cars are built with pretty legendary quality. I'll go 8 grand on that car. And then the Maxima, $1,500.
That seems fair.
Well, I originally praised both the Supras before for 90 grand because I think that market is hot and the right person would dig both of those specs. I'm going to stick with that, 90 grand on both. The RX-7, as much of a disgusting, horrible, freakish roach of a car that is, I think the anime fan out there is going to spend 15 grand for that. The Mitsubishi, I have at 35. They're pretty decent cars, but a bit heavy. The LS400, you know, it's a million-mile car. It's famous, 5 grand. And on the Maxima, I put 5 grand on the Maxima because I don't think you're going to pry it out of his hands for less than 5 grand.
He has got a couple of Mercedes. He's got an SL55 that is still very much automatic, despite its pending manual swap for about the duration of the life of the channel. And he's got an S65, a 2015. That's a perfect daily driver. I put the SL at 17.5 and the S65 at 50.
Well, I'm at 15 on the SL55. You know, once it's done a manual, maybe we can change that. And I'm with you at 50 on the SL on the S65.
How many times have you said manual swap in this video so far?
Too many. More than there are manual swaps.
None of them have been realized. I thought it was manual swap, so I had it at 22, but I'm gonna back that down probably to 18. The 65, I don't know why I had it at 75, and I think this is one of my old prices. And both you guys have it at 50. I'm going to pull it down. I'm still going to go a little higher than you. I'm going to say 60.
Now, Freddie has 2 Hellcats, sort of. One of them is an old rental car that is fully transformed into a red-eye Hellcat. The other is a Chrysler Pacifica with a Hellcat crate motor sitting right next to it, just about to go in. And so neither of them are worth what they would be worth if they were actually what they seem to be. But I said 35 for the Charger and 15 for the van.
Yeah, I think 40 on the Charger. At the end of the day, you still have all that power. The van, 10 grand. Put the motor in, then maybe we can revisit it.
Yeah, I had the fake red eye at 45. Maybe that's being a bit generous, but it is, you know, a monstrously fast car for a price. And I love the idea, the concept, the thought of the Pacifica Hellcat. I would love to see it finished, but I put it at 11,000.
Lots of good thoughts out there. Not all of them finished, which is why he has to have a good tow truck. He's got a 99 F350, 275,000 miles, a lot of Banks upgrades and things like that. Useful to have around 15 grand.
Yeah, you know, it's always nice to have a truck that you know you can't kill no matter what, and it's always going to be there. I put it at 10, but you know, I think I need to up that a little bit. I'll go 14.
There we go.
Yeah, you know, the truck market, especially old trucks, big useful utility-based trucks are worth more and more these days. I had it at 12. I'm going to move it up to Ed at 15.
Freddie has 3 Audis at the moment. One is the R8, an '08 car that he recently acquired from Tyler Hoover, and he has upgraded it to like a 2014 kind of spec. It's an R-tronic car, 64,000 miles. I said that it's worth about 50 grand. Very, very cool car. He also has a 1983 Audi Quattro that he recently acquired from your cousins over at RM Sotheby's at the Rudy Klein auction. It is destroyed. It has sat outside for a very long time. It needs all the things. He paid $4,500 for it. He'd like to think that, but as you said, he was the high bidder, so I'm going to put it down at $3,500, and it probably is not financially viable to restore. He also has, care of my recommendation, an Audi RS e-tron lease that he's got a few months left on. So I just put kind of the residual value that he might have there in utilization at $5,000.
So the R8s, those cars I think are getting hotter as they ended, and the production of the V10 engines are no more. People seem to wake up to what those cars really are. I'm more optimistic. I like the car at 80 grand. I think it's going to continue. The Quattro, not really a whole lot you can do with that car. You've got a title and a chassis and some sheet metal. I'll give him 4 grand on that. And the e-tron, going off of what you would buy one today, not necessarily the same route you're looking at, I'd throw 85 on that car.
The R8, they're super cool. It's a V10 swap, so it's not an original V10 car. It's pretty nice. I put that at 55. The Quattro, they only brought a few hundred of those things into the U.S. They're relatively rare. What are you going to do with it? I told Freddie he's got to turn it into a full-blown, Pikes Peak rally car would be the coolest thing for it. And hopefully he's got the money and time to do it. Maybe he'll do a manual swap. I put it at 4 grand because that's kind of what they're worth, especially for people who want to build them into things. And the electric Audi, same thing. Disposable phone car he's leasing. It's negative $12,000.
At least we're fair. That's what Tyler got for his. He's got another couple fun things laying around. He's got a 2017 Focus RS, really nicely done car. I said 25 grand. A 91 Renault Alpine GTA Turbo, imported from Japan. I said 18. He's got his Honda Beat 91, 112,000 miles. I said 2,500 bucks. And always some weird stuff in the background of the videos.
Well, I'm in agreement with you on the Focus at 25 and the Alpine at 18. The Beat, I have no idea what it's worth. I'm just going to throw out 1,500 bucks.
The Focus RS, I think we're all agreed on that one at 25 grand. The Alpine GTA Turbo, I've been following those. They're super cool. They're not a car you want to meet in person because they're actually grossly built, but they're great in thought. I put that at 20. The Beat, those things are out here in California, and you can't really lay your hands on one that works for less than 4 grand.
Now, like you, John, Freddie likes his replica cars, and he has 2 of them. Freddie has a LaFerrari sculpture. It is made of wood and fiberglass and things. It looks like a 1-to-1 scale LaFerrari, and I believe in that. It has value as a movie prop, which I think is what it was built for, like a buck to kind of like design parts off of. And so somebody who wants the rest of the world to believe they also have a LaFerrari will probably pay him something. I said about 50 grand to park it amongst their collection of other cars. It could stand to have some proper headlights, some wheels to sell the look a little bit more, but it's worth something to somebody. Shmee told him it was worth 100.
It's cool. It's not 100 grand cool, and truthfully, I don't even know if it's 50 grand cool. I like it at 35.
It's amazing how many of these replica cars are popping up nowadays, especially with 3D printing. There were a couple of like half-scale F1 cars for sale and bring a trailer that went for good money. They had a 1-to-1 scale Chaparral. Why you would build a 1-to-1 scale car, not build a real car, I don't understand. But that car I think was bid up to about 33, so I think 35 is the number on that.
It does have a big old crack in it, but he's working on that, I think. Now
he's
he
going to
also
manual
has
swap it at some point.
He also has a Diablo kit car that was with Richard Rawlings and then passed around. I believe it is the sister car to the one that John Cena had built for well into 6 figures. I'm not a kit car guy. It is a good-looking one. It would pass in a lot of company. I think it's probably worth 75 grand. I'd buy a whole lot of other $75,000 things before I would have it, but hey, somebody would.
I agree with you in the sense that, kit cars are not quite the choice you want to go with. That being said, it is a good example. Proportionally, it looks right, and you've still got a V12 in it. I'm going to give it a little bump. I'm going to go 100.
$100,000.
Kit cars have their place if you can't afford the real thing, and this one is obviously well built. I think minus the John Cena sweat and DNA in it and whatever else. I agree with Chris. I think it's 100 grand for the right person.
Well, that brings me to a total of 2.94 million for Freddie. Fakara, by my math, you're at about 257. And Chris, I've got you at 2.6. And so the average of us there is 2.704. Last time, Freddie, we had it 1.617. He's come up a lot further. We won't talk about how much debt's involved, but goodness gracious, at this point, the gap is only $60,000 across nearly $3 million worth of cars for each of them. So I'm proud of my friends.
I'd say they've done a great job building some collections.
Both of them put together tremendous collections. So obviously, Freddie needs to go out and buy a $100,000 car and creep by and see if he can beat Hoovie.
That's right. That's right. So, John from Fakara Classic, thank you so much for joining us as always. Well done, Tyler. Well done, Freddie. I think it'll be a constant back and forth with all of us as to who has the most in cars and who's making the worst financial decisions. The jury remains out on that. And Chris from Somo, thank you so much for joining us, offering your expertise and constant observation of the auction market. If you're looking to buy or sell your next dream car, check out Somo. We'll put a link in the description below. They're always selling something interesting, and they're a great place to get the right money for your car. About a year ago, y'all sold several of my cars, and I was very, very pleased with the outcome, and I'm sure there's plenty more out there today. So it's time to go browse for my next bad decision. But thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Great job. We'll see you next time.